I'm a regular 33-year-old office worker. After graduating from Yale University, I landed a job at a major corporation headquartered in downtown New York. I've always been a bit timid, prone to getting easily upset over minor troubles, so my initial 3 years at the company were extremely difficult. I believe the reason I've managed to become a competent businessman is all thanks to the great bosses I've encountered so far. Especially after being assigned to the New York sales department at the age of 30, my boss, Thompson, seemed to take a special liking to me. Indeed, it was in this New York sales department that I met Mary Ann. Mary Ann, who worked in sales administration, and I got along well as we handled the same clients, and we got married when I was 30 and she was 32. Our marriage was smooth, and we were a happy couple. If anything, I was somewhat under her thumb, but I didn't mind and enjoyed everyday life. The only problem was that we were unable to have children. Having children was a dream of mine, and I had always expressed this to Mary Ann. Mary Ann, who loves children, agreed, and we tried many times as a couple, but we were never blessed with a child. Despite this, I believed I had been leading a relatively smooth and prosperous life. That is, until the end of last year. From around December of last year, my circumstances changed dramatically. I began having fights with Mary Ann, who I rarely argued with since we got married, almost every day. For some reason, Mary Ann started to be on the warpath with me. While Mary Ann is quite blunt, unlike me, she hates illogical or unfair situations. In other words, she's not the type to lose her temper unreasonably or treat people differently based on her mood. However, Mary Ann had become a different person. She no longer smiled at all, and if I came home a little late, she would say, "Why are you coming home so late? You're having an affair, aren't you? I'm going back to my parents' house," and she actually did. And if I sought intimacy at night, she would reject me, saying, "No way, don't touch me. It's disgusting." At first, I thought, well, people go through phases like this. Mary Ann had quit her job when we got married and was working part-time at a local supermarket during the day, so I figured that was probably a stressful work environment. Or maybe she was frustrated with herself for not getting pregnant, despite my constant desire for a child. So, I decided to let her do as she pleased for a while. However, instead of improving, the situation only got worse. Mary Ann's attitude became increasingly worse, and she often went back to her parents' house in New York. Even when I went to pick her up, I was turned away. I found myself raising my voice more and more, and our marital relationship had completely chilled. Then, in February of this year, Mary Ann presented me with divorce papers. When she coldly said, "It's a good thing we don't have children," I was furious for the first time in my life. I had reached the end of my patience with Mary Ann, who had not explained her disagreeable attitude no matter how much I asked, and I stamped the papers in a fit of anger. Thus, our marriage ended after 3 years. The troubles that had befallen me were not over. Thompson, who had always been attentive to me and often invited me to drinks or golf, suddenly became distant. I was having an experience I never wanted to have, where the attitude of someone I had been on good terms with changed dramatically for no apparent reason, and I was experiencing two of them at the same time. I was disliked by Thompson for some reason, who had the authority to make personnel decisions, and it led to my demotion. I was transferred to a sales office in rural Nebraska, which was referred to in the company as a retirement home or a place of exile. The transfer order came 2 days after my divorce from Mary Ann was finalized. Thus, my life in the country, plagued by anger and despair, began. One chilly day in April, I left the office at the end of the day and trudged toward my rented single-person apartment. A cold rain was falling outside, which further dampened my spirits. As I was walking down the road, I noticed a young woman sitting against a utility pole. I thought she might be drunk from a party or something, but as I got closer, I realized something was wrong. A smashed smartphone was lying next to her. With a bad feeling, I timidly looked at her face and found that she was unconscious with her eyes rolled back. I called out to her, "Are you okay?" But there was no response. Her smartphone was broken, and there was a high chance she couldn't call anyone for help. Judging the situation, I quickly called an ambulance. I held an umbrella over her head to keep it from getting wet while waiting for the ambulance to arrive, and I put my coat on her. The paramedics arrived, but there seemed to be no family or friends around, so I accompanied her. Once we arrived at the hospital and I was waiting in the waiting room, her doctor spotted me and informed me her condition has improved. She seemed to have passed out due to low blood pressure amid her unstable condition during her pregnancy. The baby is safe, too. He must have mistaken me for her spouse. Rather, I was relieved to find out she was pregnant and that I could respond early. Just as I was about to explain, "No, actually I'm not her family, just a passerby," a couple in their 60s ran up shouting, "Doctor, is the baby okay?" They were probably her parents. "Yes, both of them are safe. You must be relieved," the doctor replied, and the couple showed their relief and joy with their whole bodies. It seemed as if a thread of tension had been instantly released. She would have been in danger if she had been left out in the rain unconscious, but thanks to this man here who reported it quickly, the doctor said, and the couple came over to me, crying and thanking me.
"Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver."
And that's how I ended up being invited to the Reynolds family's house over the weekend. Sophie made a full recovery and had been discharged from the hospital, and they wanted to thank me as a family. Since I had no plans for the weekend, I decided to accept their invitation. I was astonished when I arrived at the address they gave me. The mansion that towered on a cliff, which I could barely see from my run-down apartment, was the Reynolds house. Nervously, I rang the intercom, and all three members of the Reynolds family came out to greet me. The second thing that blew me away that day was the lavish meal. Lobster, abalone, domestically produced branded beef, any high-quality ingredient you could name was laid out on the table. Are you sure about all this? I think it's more than my monthly salary," I asked, secretly wishing I had skipped meals for the past 3 days, to which the father replied, "You saved the life of our Sophie and her baby. It's only natural. We even thought about going out to buy a whole bluefin tuna." After that, a friendly conversation started, but I was about to be blown away for the third time that day. Sophie's father was a renowned surgeon in America, and his name was known to everyone in the field of surgery. Like many talented and wealthy people, Sophie's father had a relaxed attitude toward life and was fundamentally warm to people. His wife and Sophie also touched my heart with the same warmth, and before I knew it, I was talking about Mary Ann. The fact that her attitude had suddenly changed even though we had been getting along, the fact that I still didn't know why, and the fact that I couldn't completely hate Mary Ann. The father seemed truly sorry for me. With his large hands, he patted my shoulder and said, "There must be some reason, but it's a shame to choose to divorce a kind young man like you. But cheer up. This is a rural area, but the air and food are delicious, and it's a perfect place to heal your heart." I felt a little better. After enjoying the melt-in-your-mouth delicious food, I decided to leave the mansion. "We still haven't thanked you enough, so if you ever need anything, feel free to come and see us." The couple, who were in high spirits from the wine, saw me off. Sophie said she would walk part of the way home with me, so we walked together for a while.
I don't know if it's my place to ask, but I'm really curious about what happened to Mary Ann.
I know, right? I can't think of anything. I wish there was a way to peek into Mary Ann's head. I've thought about that many times.
About that?
Sophie added.
We can't see inside her head, but couldn't we find out what she was interested in at that time?
Huh?
You know, her internet search history. If she hasn't separated her account from yours, that is.
I was taken aback. That's right. Marian always used my account to search because she thought logging out was a hassle. It's not cool to check my ex-wife's search history, but I'll look into it.
That's not uncool. You're a hero, Steve.
Please let me thank you again, Sophie said and went home. I ran back to my apartment at full speed. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? As soon as I got into the room, I checked the internet search history. It started around the end of last year, when Marianne started acting strange. Checking my past records, I was struck dumb. It was as if time had frozen in place. And then, without thinking, I bolted out of my apartment. By the time I reached Marianne's childhood home in New York, it was late into the night. After a bit of hesitation, I pressed the intercom. The air was clear and the stars were clearly visible, but my heart was filled with an even darker cloud than this morning. After a while, Marianne came out of the house. She was trying to look displeased, but I could tell she was bittersweet, maybe even happy. Why didn't I notice? In hindsight, Marianne's unhappy face was somewhat unnatural. And seeing Marianne's thin figure confirmed that my assumptions were correct. Marianne, do you have cancer? Marianne couldn't hold back her tears and broke down on the spot. She had found out she had cancer during a checkup at the end of last year. The type of cancer that is difficult to remove with surgery. Her chances of conceiving were significantly reduced, and that she couldn't bring herself to tell me, who had been longing for a child. Even so, I wanted you to tell me the truth, not choosing to break up, but to want to fight this together. I said,
But I wanted you to be happy. You're so kind and love children, the type who should become a father. I thought you should have children with someone else, not with me who can't give birth.
She replied. I hugged Marianne. It felt like it had been a long time. Marianne didn't resist and sobbed in my chest. Then I left New York on the first flight the next morning and returned to my transfer location. Instead of going back to my house, I went straight to the mansion on the cliff. When I rang the doorbell, Sophie and her father welcomed me again with a smile.
What's up? Did you forget something?
No. I deeply bowed my head to Sophie's father on the spot. Sir, I beg you, please introduce me to the best doctor you know. I woke up in the gentle early summer sunlight. Today was Monday, a day I had to go to work. I quietly got out of bed, went out on the balcony, and bathed in the morning sun of the city. 5 years had passed since the divorce fiasco with Marianne. Sophie's father accepted my desperate plea and introduced me to a doctor who he said was the only one who could match him. It was a difficult operation, but all the cancer that had been eating away at Marianne's body was gone. After the surgery, we immediately remarried. During our separation, we had both realized, more than we could stand, that we were irreplaceable parts of each other's lives. Even after that, Sophie's father helped me for a year. He introduced me to several CEOs he knew, presenting them as new business prospects for me. Thanks to Sophie's father's connections, I was able to achieve some of the top sales figures nationwide. As a result, I was able to return to New York in a year. As I expected, Marianne was the one who requested my demotion to Thompson. Since we had many common acquaintances in New York, she feared that news of her having cancer would leak from somewhere. Unable to turn down Marianne's desperate plea, and yet feeling guilty towards me, he seemed to have acted awkwardly. Thompson kept apologizing to me, but now that I think about it, my life drastically changed because of that transfer, and it wasn't a bad experience after all. As I was thinking about that, Marianne woke up with a bad head, but she smiled brightly. Good morning. Want me to make coffee?
Yes, please. Oh, make it decaf.
Sure. I'm truly glad to be able to have such casual exchanges. Glancing at the clock, I realized that more time had passed than I thought. I need to start preparing. No time to dawdle. I began getting ready in a hurry, yet quietly, so as not to wake our sweet child, sleeping peacefully in the bedroom.